this is yet another one of these movies, and I'm repeating a previous one because I made the interesting error of doing some of my work on one of the monitors you can't actually see. So what we're going to do here is play around with filters a bit and show you how we can actually change the frequency content of sounds. I'm going to record some of my own voice and also use what's called white noise, which I generate inside Pro Tools to do some hopefully interesting things. Okay, I'm going to call this Pro Tools Movie 5B. Okay, I don't know why it clicks there. And I want to do this one a little bit quickly. I bring up the mix window and hide it there. Transport window, I'm going to transport up here. I'll just check the MIDI controls. I can see the count off there, and it's turned off, which is good. Okay, the music's going to start recording as soon as these modes here change how you can sort of move things around and click, etc. For the meantime, keep it in sleep. That will be a simple way of working that's fairly similar to what we're doing here. Anyway, new track, so I can record mono audio track, create. And automatically it's created, call this Ross voice. It's going to record from microphone 1 and play out to the stereo output, which is what we want. So record, enable that, hit the record there, and get ready to go. And get my poem, The Bobble Who Has No Toes, up on the other window. Okay, that was a bit of microphone handling noise. Okay. Right, here we go. The Pobble Who Has No Toes. The Pobble Who Has No Toes had once as many as we. When they said, "Someday you may lose them all," he replied, "Fish fiddy-diddy." And his Aunt Jabisca made him drink lavender water tinged with pink. For she said, the world in general knows, there's nothing so good for a bobble's toes. I can afford to do a bit more handling noise there at the end because I'm not going to use that. And let's stop. Okay, I want to zoom in on this so I can see what's going on. And I want to find the bits where it actually got where the poem actually is. Right, here we go. It's not there. The Pobble Who Has No Toes. The Pobble Who Has No Toes had once as many as we. Okay, I can get rid of that. Backspace. And I think that's a bit of handling noise at the end. Okay, I've got rid of the bits I don't want, which means I'm going to, if I normalise now, it's going to normalise a bit better. That loud bit of handling at the end would have ruined my normalisation, because that would have been the loudest part of the audio, to which all the other was adjusted. The Pobble Who Has No Toes. The Pobble Who Has No Toes. Don't need the record enable. Let's go straight to the end. The world in general knows there's nothing so good for a bobble's toes. Okay, that's the Pobble Who Has No Toes poem. Normalise that up. Normalise to -3, shall I choose? Okay. The Pobble Who Has No Toes. The Pobble Who Has No Toes had once as many as we. When they said, "Someday you may lose them all," there's quite a bit of background noise there. Do you hear that? We could try using noise reduction on it, but I'm going to try and gate it and see if I can gate it out. So let's put a plugin, Dynamics, Expander Gate. Noise reduction would actually try and learn what that background noise sounds like and try and get rid of it. Let's try this. The Pobble Who Has No Toes. It certainly was better at the beginning. The Pobble Who Has No Toes. The Pobble Who Has No Toes had once as many as we. When they said, "Someday you may lose them all," he replied, "Fish fiddy-diddy." I'm always getting a pop from my replied. Okay, where's my reply? That's the first thing I'm going to play around with in terms of the... Replied, "Fish fiddy-diddy." He replied, "Lose them all." He replied. That's the he replied. Let's zoom in on it. See if we can see the pop. And there it is on the beginning. That bit there looks a bit different. Is the pop. That's not all of it, I don't think. He replied. He replied. Can hear the pop so much. "Someday you may lose them all." He replied. Okay, there's not so much. Okay, let's zoom in on that. That's where the pop is. What I'm going to do is that the pop tends to be a low frequency bit of audio. So I'm going to select the very front of that. That's the rep, and hopefully that's it. And I'm going to apply a bit of EQ to that. Now fundamentally, the pop is the low frequency component. So if I have a high pass filter, it's the high frequencies through, cuts the low ones. Let's make it sharper and let's bring it down. If I want to get rid of a pop, let's try about 110 or so. Right. Preview, is that setting? Yeah, it's a very short amount of audio, so hitting preview to hear what it sounds like isn't so good. I'm going to process and let's see how the audio changes. Okay, that looks a bit more like it should do at the beginning of that word. So I think I might have been able to get rid of some of that pop. Let's have a look. We'll notice actually that because I processed only one part of that waveform, it split it into 3 regions. I can select that one, shift select that one, shift select that one, region group, and it puts them all back together again. Let's zoom out so you can see it in context. There's the replied over there, I think. May lose them all. He replied, fish fiddy. Yeah, it's not quite lose them all. He replied, fish. There's actually a click there. I haven't been careful enough with my EQing, so I'm going to undo all that. Okay. When they said, someday you may lose them all, he replied, okay, there's a bit of a pop there. If I'm very, very careful about it, I can go in and try and edit it. And it's difficult to choose a place to edit from. If I zoom in, maybe I can get it better. I've got to get it best of if I choose between 0 crossings, where it just crosses the line. Let's try one more time. EQ, 1 band. Set it to high pass filter, try about 102, bring it up a bit, sharpest we can, process. Yeah, the problem is that that's therefore creating a click because that waveform is no longer continuous, so it's not working very well. I'll zoom out and see what we got, see whether it sounds okay. He replied, fish fid. You hear there's now a slight click. He replied, fish fiddy-diddy. He replied, fish. Okay, I could work on that, and there's various ways I can try and fix that, but fundamentally not in a short movie. That's where it goes down, and then goes down like that. That's creating a slight click. Okay, so I'm going to undo EQ. Okay, leave the normalize in, and we'll have to put up with that pop. Okay, what I'm going to do though is move that, back to the front, and I'm going to mute that for a meantime and make another track which is full of white noise. Create one mono audio track. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to be the same length as me speaking. I'm going to make some white noise. Audio Suite Other Signal Generator. This is going to make some white noise, and I want the level to be, let's not make it too loud, -12, something about there will do, process. Now what we've got there is if we look at that really, really close, that's just completely random values. So it's going randomly up and down all over the place. And fundamentally, random noise like that has a particular sound, but it also, importantly, has all audio frequencies in it at equal amounts. Okay, what you heard there was the white noise. So I'm going to rename that to be white noise, like that. Okay, right, what are we going to do? Fundamentally, what I'm going to do is put a filter on that. EQ, 1 band EQ. So we can hear what these different ones sound like. Here's the unaffected white noise. Okay, let's put it through a high pass filter, which cuts off the low frequencies, lets the high ones through. So that's just the high frequencies from the white noise. I can actually change how sharp that cutoff is. Okay, so it gets pretty much sharper. So here we let the high frequencies through, cut the low frequencies. How sharp is the transition between the two? Okay, let's take the frequencies down and hear some more of the low frequencies coming through. Okay, that's a high pass filter. Here's a low pass filter, let only the low frequencies through. Sounds like a rumble, doesn't it? You can make a rumble out of that. More of the low frequencies through. This is a low shelf filter, so we have a particular cutoff point, and below that we can either boost or cut the low frequencies. Boost, cut, boost, notch filter. Now a notch filter, actually I'm going to explain briefly here. Okay, I'll look at it again on the voice, and here we can either boost or cut various frequencies. Let's go have a look at how these affect the voice. So we'll unmute the voice, mute the white noise, and take this filter and move it over to my voice. Right, let's bring it up again. Come on, there we are. Right, and let's see what happens if we start playing around with my voice. I'm going to grab your hand, select my voice. The Pobble has no toes. Okay, let's put it through a high-pass filter, which cuts the low frequencies. The Pobble has no toes. The Pobble has no toes, had once as many as we. When they said some... So you can see how I can selectively remove, in this case, the low frequencies. Let's go for a low-pass filter. The Pobble has no toes. The Pobble has no toes, had once as many as we. When they said, someday you may lose them all, he replied, fish-diddy-diddy. And it's okay. Let's go for a filter which we can either use a parametric EQ, which can either use to boost or cut a frequency that we choose. And with the Q, deciding how wide the frequency range is that we boost or cut. One good use for this is to actually boost the audio and actually see if we can find the place where the microphone has made the voice sound really nasal, or I just naturally sound nasal. The Pobble has no toes. The Pobble has no toes, had once as many as we. When they said, someday you may lose them all, he replied, fish-fiddy-diddy. So that to me sounds really bad. We've taken that sound at that frequency range, boosted it. The Pobble has no toes. The Pobble has no toes. Sounds sort of boxy, nasal, not very nice. So if it sounds not very nice when we boost it, if we cut it, we might actually improve the voice by getting rid of that slightly not very good frequency. The Pobble has no toes. The Pobble has no toes, had once as many as we. When they said, someday you may lose them all, he replied, fish-fiddy-diddy. And his Aunt Jabisca made him drink lavender water tinged with pink. For she said the world in general knows there's nothing so good for a Pobble's toes. The Pobble has no toes. The Pobble has no toes, had once as many as we. See, I think that sounds slightly better with the frequency cut. Okay, there are lots and lots of different places we can apply filters, but that gives you a little bit of idea of what they're about and what we can do with them. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next movie where we're going to make a little bit of science fiction sound.